things. It's kind of a rainy day here in the mountains of western North Carolina, and I was going to be working in the garden this morning, and the rain sort of put a halt to that. And I thought, and I'm always trying to stay busy, so I thought, what else could I share, and what might be interesting. So I thought something I've been thinking about for a bit was sharing some of my sewing things. One of the things that I am notoriously well known for being a difficult customer when it comes to clothing. Most of my family knows never to buy me clothes. The things when I go into stores, it's absolutely impossible. I never find anything in stores that I like. So a couple of years ago, and I've been sewing since I was allowed to hold a needle. So that was since I was teeny weeny, I've been sewing. But the last couple of years, I started making a lot more of my clothes. It was all part of that when things sort of shifted to when I started doing my tending a handmade life focus and doing the things that just what inspires me each day, and that turned into making clothes. Case in point, my favorite pair of overalls. I'll talk about these another time, but they're it's wonderful fabric that I order from Eastern Europe, mostly Lithuania. The quality of the fabric is superior, and the pricing, while it may not be the cheapest way to buy fabric, it is far and away the best fabric. And I'm a linen. I love linen. Everything I own is either linen or cotton or in the winter wool. So this is the overalls were that's another project that I'll share at another time. But what I wanted to share today was my favorite jumper, and I was trying to think back, and I'm thinking I've had this jumper for maybe 20 years, and it's I've been trying to keep it going for all this time, and it's been through multiple incarnations, and it's it started off one way and it's very much a different way now. But what I just decided was it was a pretty straightforward design, and a couple of years ago I made a pattern from it, and now I own multiple versions of that jumper. A little bit certainly different from the original, but oh my gosh, it's my favorite piece of clothing. It is my that I have. I have five of them now, but I want to show you how I did that, some of the variations, and it's something I think very accessible for if you know how to sew, or even if you're just learning. I think it's a pretty easy thing to do, and just ways to think about how to take your favorite pieces of clothing, look at things from a simple perspective and maybe cobble together some patterns and do some different things, but make your own things and make them your own. And I think that's a terrific way to dress, and certainly much more unique, and certainly not anything that anybody else is going to have or that you'll ever see in a store. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to pull out my variations and share that with you. So we'll do that here in just a second, and I'll be right back. So stay tuned. Okay, here we are. Here's the jumpers. So actually I have 5 total, so that includes the original. So this is the original, and then I have 4 other versions of it. It started off, it was apple green, like Granny Smith apple green, which after years of wearing and washing and everything became a very pale version of Granny Smith apple green. So then I put it in the dye pot, and it's been in the dye pot. It's been through the dye pot a couple of times. But the thing to notice is that it's very plain. It's just, straight across the back, straight across the front. The skirt has, it's just basically another rectangle, but it's got some pleats, which sometimes on the ones that I make are pleats, or sometimes it'll be gathered. The original buttons down the side, which I decided was way too much work. And then the back, to make it a little bit more fitted, has darts. And so the darts give it a little bit better fit, like on the back side here. And it also had patch pockets on the front, which I think are a pain in the neck to do and not as practical. So I made some changes, and the edges are a bias, like a self fabric bias, which is really easy to do. But I'll show you my variations. It is my absolute favorite piece of clothing, hands down. Great little details, raw edges on the bias tape, the bias strip, which is super easy and I think looks a lot more interesting. Did little block printed. This is linen, little block printed little bits, little sort of appliques that I did on there, all raw edges. Did the same thing on the back. And no pockets on this one. I forgot about pockets, which I fixed on subsequent versions. But this is pretty much the most perfect piece of clothing. And maybe not quite as much the perfect piece of clothing. This is jumper number 2. This was remnants from curtains that I made in our last house, hence the patchwork pattern, and maybe the jumper is a little bit shorter than what I wanted, but it's still a pretty good piece of clothing. And here I have jumper number 3. This one is a big improvement since I managed to remember to put the pockets in. It's got that nice detailing with the block printed linen, front and back, although you can't see it when my hair is long, but it's still a nice detail. Pockets are great. It's all the fabric and the binding are all the same. And this is number 4. Number 4 is indigo dyed linen and started off as something completely different. It's got those pockets. It's got just mostly plain, but it's all sort of piecework. It started off as something different, but it's a light and dark pattern. And then it's got I did the finished edges on the inside, so it actually doesn't have the raw edges. This one's a little more finished, so it's got all that nice patchwork and contrast detail. And the box pleats that you'll see a little bit closer detail here in just a second. Okay, so here's how I did it. This is the original jumper, and I folded it in half and then cut. This is like heavy brown craft paper, and made the pattern, so it's just cut on the fold. I allowed 1/2 inch seam allowances at the waist and on the sides. And then on the back, it's the same thing, folded it in half. Don't have to worry about the seam allowances on the arms and at the neck because you do the bias fabric around that to finish off the edges, which makes it really easy. And again, along the fold, and again, 1/2 inch seam allowances, although I forgot to include that on the sides, but I add that in. This one has the bias tape is doubled over, so I do mine where I just stitch it along one side and then have a raw edge, so this is a little more finished. I definitely decided not to do the buttons down the side, and I also decided not to do the patch pockets just because they're a pain in the neck to try and line them up and get them all just right. And then the box pleats for to give it a little more fit. And the pattern is just a rectangle of the craft paper. And then that's on the one side, it's along the fold, so then I figure out the box pleat and then the dart. And that's just something that I know how to do because I've been sewing for a long time, but it's pretty easy. Again, it's along the fold, and add 1/2 inch seam allowance for the edges. And then the hem is just however long you want to make it. I added, this is the secret weapon here. This is the pants pocket. This is from a pair of men's pants pattern that I've had for decades, and it's the best pattern. But it's only 4 pieces. It's the front and the back, that wonderful pocket, and then the square, and that's it. Super, super simple. And like I always say, God is in the details. So to make these more my own, this is where I added the little block printed appliques, and those were just, I did strips of them and then added them on. And then that's the contrasting unbleached linen that I put on for the trim. And see there, I stitched along and then just folded it over, so it's a lot easier to put that on than to try to do just a full bias tape. The box pleats are super simple, and then on this one I really like a wider hem. I think that gives it it's a much higher end look, and so I usually I think that's about 1.5 inches is my favorite depth for a hem. But then on this was the other one that I finally remembered to put pockets in, but again, that nice detailing with the block printed little appliques, and those are just kind of wabi-sabi funky. The box pleats that give it that nice extra fit. And then top stitching is always is a nice detail, so I do a lot of top stitching. And then here's the darts on the back, and the darts again makes it so it's not so full across the back. I did have to gather it in just a little bit there, but more details which don't show up with my hair, but still nice to have them. And on this one I left the raw edge with the selvage edge, and it's ended up not my favorite. But the set-in pockets, which are I'll always put the set-in pockets from here on out, and those are just super simple. But the key here is that they're from a men's pants pattern and made to go into the waistband, so that makes them nice and deep and gives it just a really solid feel. But that's it. And that's all of them. No doubt there will be more. I almost forgot one more thing. When wearing funky clothes, it's especially fun to have funky shoes. And I have found the perfect pair of funky shoes. I am well known for not wanting to spend a lot of money on my clothes, but I'm also well known for spending a little bit more money on my shoes. And wait till you see these. They are from Spain. The brand is called Satori-san, and this is Beneras, and they are perfect. Handmade, and just the coolest shoes ever. That's it. That's my new pair of funky shoes that I am absolutely thrilled with and wear as often as I can, and my jumpers, which I also wear as often as I can. I am obsessed with these, as you can tell, and I hope that you got some useful information out of this little video, and I'm hoping that I'll do some more. I'll do one with on how I made my overalls, which are a copy of a couple of pairs of flax overalls that I've pretty much worn to shreds, and so I'll do another one down the road where I'm making my showing you how to replicate those flax overalls. But for now, thanks for joining in. If you have any questions about trying to do something like this for yourself, it's really super simple. It's funny how at one point it just was mind-boggling for me to even try this, but now I didn't do it. I didn't try replicating patterns or doing any of that for a really long time, and then all of a sudden I went back in and it was so easy. It was just it worked out really well. I love doing it, and I love sharing it, and I love sharing these with you as I continue tending my handmade life, and so appreciate you joining me on my journey. So thank you very much for following along, and blessings, and take care. Bye.